So if you're looking to create a private equity fund for your mergers and acquisitions deals, you really shouldn't get it done. You really shouldn't even touch doing that until you make sure you get your first one done. Because a phenomenon that we've seen lately at Raises.com, a company where we assist people in setting up their syndications and their private equity deals, is mainly when people, they want to get into mergers and acquisitions and then they're very excited, almost grandiose, which is good, and the ambition is excellent. But we just need to, for this video, we just need to kind of set some reality and get people, humbled down and see reality. So the business plan that many people jump into, that we start to sense when some of our financial analysts help some of our members set up their private equity deals, is mainly when people jump into it, they don't understand that they see the origination side. So basically they call a seller of a company, or they get some people to call sellers of a company. They say, hey, yeah, I want to buy you. And they get some people saying yes, and then they get excited. Or maybe they go to a broker and they say, hey, I want to raise capital for this acquisition. I'm excited. So you have a lot of people doing that. And what people start to see as they go through the process is they get overwhelmed, because when people start to go to the actual closing of the deal part, they start to see that their job becomes like 6 different jobs simultaneously within a 4-week to 2-week time frame. So essentially people are like, yeah, okay, I want to buy you. Okay, and then after the next step, after sending a non-disclosure agreement, is really to send a letter of intent saying that I'm going to buy you in this period of time, assuming that my due diligence period checks out, and I'll I'll do the due diligence to make sure that I'm not being scammed. I'm going to also find the debt to be able to acquire it. And if I can't find a debt and I need a down payment, and the person says no to seller finance is basically when the company uses the profits to pay down the loan that the owner would use to acquire it. If they can't find that, I will somehow find a way to raise equity with an equity partner and do all the paperwork to raise equity in a way that I won't get sued, while also owning it, closing the deal, and making sure that I actually have the wherewithal to grow the company and not run it into the ground during the transitionary period. And after that, I will then get multiple companies in the same niche and create a large either roll-up or private equity fund for all these companies. That's really what people are trying to do for somebody, and especially for people that haven't raised a single cent in their careers, or they haven't even, maybe they were working a 9-to-5 job, or maybe they're students, and then they haven't really touched this before. So we just need to set some reality straight. That's a really great endeavor, but you have to make sure that you tranche out and you plan everything out, because generally in the real estate sector, what we see is that a real estate syndication and a mergers and acquisitions deal on a one-off basis are very similar. So somebody looking to acquire real estate via syndication, or somebody looking to acquire real estate at all, if you just look at somebody who's working to acquire a business, the process is not that dissimilar. It's a very similar process, because real estate is really just another type of business entity, and basically it's just an asset that you're looking to acquire, same of a business. The only difference is some of the nuance. So basically, instead of trying to set up the private equity fund, if you're in mergers and acquisitions, instead of setting that up, you just want to treat it like you're doing a real estate syndication and remove all the real estate nuances, but put in your business buying nuances. So the way that can look like is, obviously when people get into mergers and acquisitions without a track record, they have to build a board. There are a lot of courses, there are a lot of programs on this. Dan Pina and all these people, basically you want to get the authority to get sellers to believe that you would be able to buy the assets. And the way that can manifest is getting a board, getting the team members on a contingent basis, where you're not paying money out of pocket, but you're doing everything on a contingent basis after the deal closes. And you make sure you get the reputation around you and you look authoritative, so that people don't ask you for proof of funds or letters of commitments as much if you can't provide them. But if not, you can work with a company like Raises.com or some other investors that that can give you the letter of commitment, so that the seller of the company can actually believe that you'll buy them. Because many sellers don't believe that you'll be able to buy them if you're a random Joe Blow off the street. How can you buy a $10 million company if you're working 9-to-5 at some sort of Mickey Mouse type of institution? So yeah, the point is you want to get people to believe you. Then after that, you have to get the financing and you have to do the due diligence. So, you know, the way that we tell the syndicators and the way that you shouldn't rush into it, and the second reason why you shouldn't rush into it is if not only because it's like 10 jobs in one, but it's also because it's a track record. Because if you have to do all that work to build track record for one deal, imagine all the work you have to do 10 deals. So that's why we tell a lot of the syndicators, because even at another company, once I was helping a solar group, you know, raise capital for their fund, and they kept on hitting the objection that they just want to do one deal at a time because they don't trust the fund managers to be able to deploy their capital better than the investors that they're asking. Similarly, if you have a collection of companies and then you're talking about acquiring them, why are you talking about acquiring 10 companies at the same time when you haven't even acquired one yet? So the idea is really just to do one mergers and acquisitions deal and have the idea of your fund and your roll-up in the back of your business plan. But honestly, don't really think about it until you just get the first one done, because 99% of people can't even get the first one done. And until then, you should just write down the long business plan as like something in the back burner in your head, but you really shouldn't talk about it until you get the first mergers and acquisitions deal done. So that's pretty much the point of this video, is just really to tell you that focus on getting the first deal done until you start talking about funds and roll-ups and acquisitions and private equity funds. Just get your first mergers and acquisitions deal done. We had one of the members who we worked with at Raises.com. He managed to get the same objection, but in the real estate sector, that, hey, I don't want to touch you until you get either you get your first deals done, because really you want to build a fund, but you haven't done a deal in your life besides a deal that you've used your own money to raise capital in. And that's another reason why we segment everything out into people that haven't done their first deal and people that have done multiple deals and are looking to create a fund. People really shouldn't be creating funds in a vast majority of situations until they can actually get financing for the fund. And it's really easy to get financing for the fund if you have a believable track record. And one of the best ways a believable track record can manifest is if you get the first deal done. Raise equity or close a large debt transaction at a small scale with one person. And after that, then it'll be much easier for you to build the story that you can do this over and over again via a private equity fund. So that's pretty much it. And the way that this can look like is, you know, simply making sure that people acquire the first deal. And after people acquire the first deal, you know, then they can get like their own company, and then they can either do a name change or they can, you know, acquire 100%, do 100% share purchase. And then after that, then they can create a limited partnership that branches out for, you know, that can also have units in all of the companies that they repeat this process for. Another way that people think of funds is sometimes when you're raising capital to buy a business, there's no seller finance and there's no debts portion, right? That's big enough for that down payment. And then you have this 25% to 10% down payment that you have to make to acquire the company. What a lot of people do if they are unable to get seller finance or enough debts is they raise equity from an investor. And to do that, you have to be careful because you can run a lot of risks. And the way that we like to talk about doing it, especially in the United States of America, is to do it 100% compliantly by having a limited partnership for that equity gap. And then people buy units in that limited partnership to fill in that equity gap. So that's the way, when people think of fund, they can either talk about, you know, getting the equity gap filled in and making sure that it's done via a limited partnership, or, you know, they can go and, you know, do multiple acquisitions and then have a fund invest in multiple deals. So basically either you get in a fund for one deal or for two deals. But really the best case scenario is to focus on just getting debts to acquire the company using seller finance. That's the best case scenario. If you can't get seller finance, just use debts and use junior debts. If you can't do like senior debt and junior debt. Junior debts is more high interest than risky debt, which is more second position, meaning that it comes like as a second lien. For those who don't know, which is like kind of so if the company goes down the toilet, really they have the second priority to get the remainder of the company. The first person that gets the first priority is the senior debts, you know, because they have the first lien to be able to acquire the assets if the company goes toast. So yeah, make sure you can do it that way. And then if you can't do it with junior debts or with senior debts or junior debt or with seller carry, you can't do any of that, then just get senior debt and then fill in the equity gap by partnering with investors. If you partner with investors with an incorporation or they just purchase units in the incorporation, without getting a specialized lawyer or without being careful, it can get really dangerous. So that's why we just recommend people to use a limited partnership, because it limits the liability that investors have in, although it may cause some pause for potential business buyers because it may not be as intimate. But from an equity point of view, it's the most recognized type of thing to invest in if you're investing in limited partnership units, which is the most recognized way that will get people the type of recognition that they want. So that's pretty much it. So basically the points at the end of the day is, number one, make sure that if you're doing your first mergers and acquisitions deal, don't start getting too excited about doing all of them at the same time or creating a private equity fund for multiple mergers and acquisitions deals. Just focus on doing one first. And it's really hard to build a track record for many people to doing one. So why would you then waste your energy in building your track record for doing multiple when you haven't even done one yet? So that's really the point. Make sure you do one at a time. And number two, really you want to get seller finance. You want to make sure that the seller is the one who's using the profits of their own business to buy it. As long as you get an analyst to prove that it's not going to destroy the business in the long run, you actually have a plan to add value to that business, and it's something that the seller would even agree to because you have the amount of leverage that you need so that you can get them to believe that you can do it. And I guess the last thing is that if you're unable to get seller finance, try to get some high interest debts if you can afford it, especially at the time of the recording this video. It may be hard. But another way is to raise equity for that down payment. The way that we usually recommend people to raise equity for that down payment is to make sure that they use limited partnership units to sell to potential investors, because it limits the liability that the investors have if things go wrong. However, it may be a bit nuanced because sometimes sellers like it when investors are more intimate. It is the best way that we recognize in raising private equity is using the limited partnership membership interests and selling those, making sure that you notify your local securities regulator if they require to be notified, so that investors recognize this model the most. And with this, that's pretty much it when it comes to people that are just getting into M&A. Really, it's just a parallel process to what the real estate people do, except you're more focused on building track record and you're working in a different niche. It's not as popular. So with this, if you could implement this yourself, get it done. If you need help with implementation, just head to raises.com and we'll help you make this happen. And if this video makes a little bit of sense, just hit that like and subscribe button below. And with this, head to raises.com, book a call, and we'll take it to the next step.